Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Dirty Knitting Hippie podcast. My name is Kristen and I'm coming to you from the San Francisco Bay Area where I live with my husband, our 2 boys, and Guinness the Wonder Lab, our dog. You can find me on Instagram as the Dirty Knitting Hippie and on Ravelry as Tyler's Mom Chris. And you can also find me in the Dirty Knitting Hippie podcast group on Ravelry. So welcome to all new viewers and welcome back to all returning viewers. Thank you for spending some time with me. I hope you enjoy your time, and if you are new, I hope you come back because you've enjoyed your time. So today, let's see, I have a finished object, so I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to show you some works in progress, and then I have some acquisitions. And let's see. And then there was a question in the Ravelry group, so I'm going to answer that. And then at the very end, I always like to give a tip. And then finally, just a little bit of an update. I have had some people ask, so at the end I'll give a personal update, and you can tune out. I'll let everybody know knitting is over, and and you can either hang around or you can leave. So because I am very high tech and we have a really high budget here for this podcast, you can see my set behind me. I'm still on the bed. And I have my laptop on a couple pillows. So there may be a little motion involved, and I will attempt to not move too much so we don't all need Dramamine by the end of watching this. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here. I first have a finished object, which is a pair of socks. These have not been blocked, so that's my disclaimer. You can see the little doodly doddly at the heel. So they haven't been blocked, they haven't been worn, and I haven't woven the ends in. They're just hanging out on the inside. So I typically actually weave my ends in after I block, just in case you have like a little bit of a little slub of yarn that kind of pokes out after blocking. So these are knit out of the Cozy Knitters Bliss Base yarn. It was my first time using it, and I really enjoyed my experience with this yarn. So I actually had bought another skein, and I showed it on my last podcast, I believe. And I'm really excited about using it again because this was really, really nice stuff to work with. This is her Bliss Base, which is an 80/20 merino nylon. This is the His and Hers colorway. And it was a total dream to work with. It's kind of meaty. It feels like a very substantial, nice thick yarn. It's a fingering, so it's not thick as in like over gauge, but it feels really solid. I know that I've knit with some other fingering yarns that feel a little bit more silky and smooth, and no, this feels like a really nice wearing sock yarn, so I'm excited about wearing these. I knit my vanilla socks cuff down. I used a 2x2 ribbing at the top. I cast on 64 stitches, and I used a size 2.25 millimeter size, US size 1 needle. I knit these concurrently on DPNs. I prefer DPNs as opposed to magic loop or 2 at a time. For some reason, 2 at a time feels like terminal knitting to me. I've tried it, I don't like it. But But I do enjoy DPNs, so I knit these concurrently. Like I said, cuff down 2x2, 64-inch cast on. These have an afterthought heel, and the afterthought heel that I used was a combination of the Susan B. Anderson's Smooth Operator or SOS socks afterthought heel. So I used her stitch decreases. And then I used Laura Linneman, also has her version of an afterthought heel. And she uses different decreases. But the one thing that she does is that she adds a couple extra stockinette rows with the contrast color or whatever you use on your heel to give it a little bit more depth. So I did that, and then I used the decreases from Susan B. Anderson. I went back and did my toe in the contrast yarn that Christina includes with her Cozy Knitter yarn. And I will give you kind of a close-up of what that looks like. Oh, look at the little defect there. That's awesome. I don't know what happened. The other thing I did on these, and no, you can't really see it here. I in Susan B. Anderson's SOS like sock recipe or pattern, she has both. She has a short version and a long version included in that pattern. There's a really nice tutorial link to, I want to say it's the Knitting Pipeline. And she talks about closing up what is called the pig's eye. That's a little hole that can happen when you do this particular type of heel, or actually, well, yeah, I could see it happening in this type of heel, maybe in a short row heel. You get this tiny little hole. It's called a pig's eye. And there's a way of picking up stitches, the legs on the stitch below, that closes this up so you don't have a noticeable hole. Or you can leave it. I don't, you do what you want. It's your sock. But it kind of makes it nice, and I don't know. Can you see? Yeah, you can see it there. It's slightly noticeable still, but because I haven't woven in the ends yet, what I'll do is I'll go back and kind of weave the ends in. It'll kind of cinch that up a little bit. Also with blocking, it'll kind of let the stitches settle. So usually what happens is it just kind of settles into a nice seamless pattern where you don't see that hole or the pig's eye. I like the pig's eye term, which is nice. So yeah, those are my socks. And they were a lot of fun to knit. It was really nice and mindless. I'm still finding that mindless for me is the way to go. So yeah, these were a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to blocking and wearing these when I get to wear real shoes. I'm still wearing tennis shoes. So I have a really nice stack of socks to look forward to. Okay, so that was my only finished object. I have, it's kind of a hoe, almost a faux. I am almost done with my zigzagular socks. Let me get the pattern out first and I'll show you that. This pattern is zigzagular and zigzagular socks. And the pattern was written by Susie White of Prairie Girl Designs. I can show you the picture. So that's the picture of these socks. There's a left and a right. So on the left you have a very distinct zigzag cable that runs down kind of like the left side of the leg, and then on the right it's the opposite. I didn't actually initially enjoy knitting this pattern for some reason. Nothing to do with the pattern. I think it was just, It's a really tiny. I knit cables, but very rarely do I do like a 2-stitch cable. And it was a little fiddly for me at first. By the time I got to like the end of the first sock, um, it was more comfortable, and I'm just kind of flying through that second one at this point. Well, because I'm almost done. But like for the foot part, I was just flying through it. I had to kind of play with a comfortable cable needle. I don't cable without a cable needle. Some people have that talent. I'm not that coordinated. Let's see, what did I play with? I used a toothpick, which is it's the right diameter, the right gauge, but it's a little too short. Well, no, it wasn't too short. It was that it was not polished, and so like sometimes my yarn would kind of stick to it. Second sock, I ended up just grabbing a DPN and saying, screw this, and just pushing that DPN through with my finger. It was no big deal. I kind of wish I had done that from the start, but I'm not always that creative till the end. A little slow starting there. So I have not woven in my ends. That is not a secret. I don't do that until the end, like I mentioned. But I have, this is my left, and I didn't put it on a blocker because I only have the one pair. But so I have this. That's what my cable looks like. And so I have, I used a contrasting heel and toe on this. So, sorry about that. My phone was ringing. So I used, this is opal wool, and it's nice and toothy. I actually have fallen in love with opal wool. It is a 75/25 virgin wool polyamide, and it feels really substantial. And I know it softens a little bit after you block it. And the one thing I'll go back to that in a minute. I also used contrasting heels and toes with this yarn is the oatmeal color from Simply Sock Yarn. It's their house brand. It's sold in 50-gram balls, or 50-gram skeins. It's not a ball. And it's a 75/25 merino nylon. I will put that in the show notes. But I bought it just to try for heels and toes, and I really actually like it. I like it enough that I may actually make some socks out of it instead of just contrasting heels and toes. I bought a couple skeins to try, and I was really impressed with it out of the gate. So I'll see how it blocks up, and then make a sock out of it. So one thing that I just mentioned, when I block, I always add a little glug of white vinegar to my blocking bath. And the reason I do that is that I've had a couple experiences where my yarn has bled, and certain colors are more prone to bleeding. Blues and reds, or anything with a blue and a red base, so I mean even purple, or sometimes pinks, or maybe oranges. But I had a really craptastic experience with a commercial yarn, not a indie dyer, but it happens, to indie dyers as well, where it was just hemorrhaging of dye. I will not say who that manufacturer was. It was not handled very well by that manufacturer, so I am not going to say. I I don't want to slander or give my opinion on it, but I will not be using those products in the future. Basically, it took at least 12 blocking baths with a lot of vinegar. It took some heat. It took throwing some fiber in there. I ended up with yarn that was many, many shades different than what I started with, and a project that was pretty much ruined. So I always, always, always throw white vinegar in. That stuff's cheap, so I throw a bunch in. So sometimes my things come out smelling like pickles. But I add white vinegar, and then I always, my first go round, I always use unicorn fiber rinse, I think it is. It's like a conditioner, because sometimes in the dyeing process things get a little bit rougher. That yarn takes a lot of abuse in the dye process with acid dyes. So when I get a toothy wool, this isn't super toothy, but when I get a wool that's a little bit less than soft, it's really nice to see how it comes out at the end, because it can really, really soften up your end project. And then when I go back, after I've worn something and I'm just kind of either freshening it up like I would do with a shawl or a cowl, sometimes I'll use soap because it smells really good. Yeah, I always put fiber rinse to start with though. So this was the hoe. This is my hoe. Then my almost hoe is here. Shocking. This is my my afterthought heel line. I have it tangled, but I was lazy. I didn't cut it, so it's really long, and it's just hanging off. So this sock, I am on. Oh, that was Guinness. You can hear her. I think she'll settle in a minute. She's in here with me. So this is. She's not settling. Hold on one second. I'll send her out of the room. So yeah. So that was Guinness. So this sock is being knit on size 2.25, just like the other one. Surprise, surprise. Size US 1. I'm using on this one my signatures. The other zigzagular was knit on, I think they were Chalgoos. Like I said, I like to knit my socks on DPNs, and I typically knit them concurrently. So what I'll do is I start at the cuff, and I'll knit both cuffs, and then I do the leg, and I knit both legs, and then I go and put my afterthought heel line in, and I do that on both, and then I knit the foot, and I just assembly line knit my socks so that I don't have second sock syndrome. Well, I typically don't have a second sock syndrome. I actually kind of enjoy socks now. I think that may be the first time I've ever said that. Socks are definitely starting to grow on me. So I am now at the toe on this one. I do toes and heels kind of at the end, so I might finish a sock and then go back and do the other heel and toe. Sometimes I do them at the same time. This time I'm going to do them at the end because it's really not much knitting. This is a progress keeper that is just showing me front and back, although with that cable I should easily be able to figure that out. But it also showed me the difference between left and right, which again, I should be able to figure that out, but sometimes if I just pull it out, I'm not thinking left sock, right sock. But this is from Sucre Miniatures. It's a little, can I say the brand? It's a Hostess cupcake, or it's a little cupcake with cream filling in that little swirl that we all recognize as tasty goodness. So yeah, this should be done probably tonight. This thing at this point is flying. Um, and yeah, I've kind of enjoyed this pattern. It, like I said, it took me a little bit to really kind of get into it, but once I was in, I was enjoying it, and I really like the finished project. So yeah, try it out. It's a nice project. Um, I'm using this little needle cozy that I made. Um, and I also made the bag that this is being stored in. So, yep, it's one of my older ones. So those should be done tonight, I would imagine. I have some sitting time today. Well, I always have some sitting time, but I have some sitting time waiting for one of my kids at clinic later on today. So I'll finish the toe while I'm there, and then start pulling out that heel line. And then tonight, when I'm at home, I'll throw a heel in and we'll call it good. Let's see. Oh, I have another work in progress. Oops. This is being housed in my You So and So bag, my Alice in Wonderland, or Stories of Wonderland, which is an amazing bag, and in there is fabric with words of the story. And it has a little, I know I showed this last time, but a Cheshire Cat zipper pull. I love this bag. And as you know, I have this total love affair with You So and So. I actually just got notification this morning that I have another bag on the way from her. I'm kind of hoping it does not show up on the weekend when my husband's home. Not that he objects, but I get a little bit of ribbing sometimes from him. So, yeah. So this is my oops, that's the backside. This is my Coziest Memories blanket. The pattern is by Kemper Ray, and I have actually made quite a bit of progress on this so far. Oh, and I told you last time this would be making a resurgence. Here is my poop progress keeper from oh gosh, something polymer. Patty Polymer? I will put it in the show notes. I apologize. I'm blanking out at that. That's kind of rude. I'm sorry. Rude to the shop because, yeah, I will put it in there. I do apologize. So this is, I've started the second row, and I cheated. I added my opal wool from my zigzagular socks already, even though I'm not done, but shh, nobody needs to know. I guess, well, okay, technically it's not cheating because I finished that sock that this cake came from. So that's not cheating. I finished. And then I have a whole bunch of Mitchell's Creations yarn. So this is one of hers. This is one of hers. And let's see. This one, this one, this one. Yeah, so I've made quite a bit of progress since last time I showed this. And I'm kind of enjoying it. It's nice mindless knitting. It's actually fantastic when I'm at physical therapy. And the last 25 minutes or so I'm icing. So I can just hang out and ice and knit and not think. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I am knitting this blanket on. These are some signatures as well. They're 3.25 millimeter, which is a US size 3. These are their straights. And they are I always use the stiletto points or the tips. I like a very sharp tip. And these are very slick. They don't have that on this size. I don't know if it's exclusive to their DPNs, or I only have one set of DPNs from them. There's like a little ridge on the DPNs, and that if you were to run your nail along it, it's like a circular ribbing on the DPNs. This doesn't have it, nor do the convertibles. So it may be either exclusive to the DPNs or the size DPNs. I don't know, because I only have the one set of DPNs. But I love these needles, and these are only being used on this blanket because it's a long-term project. I wanted a set of needles to keep with my blanket. I wanted a set of needles that I really enjoyed, and I really enjoy signatures. And a set of needles that I wouldn't ever need for another project, because this is going to be very long-term and ongoing, and I'm actually enjoying the mindless knitting aspect of this blanket. I don't know how big it's going to be. I don't know how wide it's going to be. I have it. It's wide, it's a little bit wider than my wingspan. That's not saying a lot. I'm only 5 feet tall, but I want a personal size blanket that I don't have to share with anybody, and that is cozy. And so like I said, it's a long-term project. I think it's a long-term project for a lot of people. So I'm enjoying it. I have one more work in progress, and it's like not even a work in progress. I just cast on. Like, I literally only have the cast on. And I haven't even joined in the round yet. So, call it what you want. I'm calling it a work in progress. This is a bag that I made quite a long time ago. And my son chose out this really cool zipper pull. We saw it at Joann's, and he said, "Mom, you've got to get that for your bag. It is so cool. It matches." And I like it. And I like that he chose that out for me. So this is going to be Westbourne, or Key New Love, by Isabel Kramer. And that is the picture. I am knitting this. This is the yarn. It is Shadow Lace by Knit Picks. It is 100% merino. It is not a superwash wool. It's okay. And I think it will make a really nice sweater. I swatched. I actually had to swatch twice because I did not get gauge with the needles suggested. So I had to go up a size, thankfully, instead of down a size. That would have been a major bummer. But it is, there's my card, Knit Picks Shadow in Larch Heather. These are 50-gram balls, 440 yards of, 100% merino. It is not superwash. I will be knitting this on size, what size are these suckers? 5. So Chalgu 5s. I'm going to have to change that cable. That's not sweater size cable. But I just grabbed the tips. I can always start it on there. I am also using a 2.5, which is a 3mm. That's what I cast. This is my work in progress. And this is what I cast onto. So I'll do the ribbing in the 2.5, and then the rest of the sweater in the 5s. I'm grabbing my swatch. So this was my swatch, and you can see it's got some drape to it. It's quite holey. Um, for those of you who are new to knitting or new to sweater knitting, number one, always swatch. If I had knit this in the needles that it's adjusted, I would not have a sweater that I met gauge on, which means it probably would not fit, or fit the way I wanted it to. It wouldn't have the nice drape that I was going for. And I mean, this is in lace gauge or lace weight yarn, which is, it's new for me. I haven't knit with lace weight yet, and I'm looking forward to it. But that's a lot of knitting. And if you get to the end and this doesn't fit, you're going to kick yourself, because all you had to do was knit a swatch to tell, is it going to fit? Am I going to get gauge with it? Am I going to like the drape? Am I going to like the yarn that I've chosen? And is it what I want to wear? So I highly recommend you knit your gauge swatch. It doesn't take much time to knit this versus an entire sweater. And like I said, you will kick yourself at the end if that sweater doesn't fit, or you don't like it, or it doesn't wash the way you want it to wash. If you are knitting a sweater in the round, you must knit your gauge swatch in the round, and it is quite ugly. Because your gauge with purling is very different than your gauge with knitting. So you must knit your swatch in the round. I found that out the hard way. I did not realize that was a thing. I knit a swatch for a sweater that I ended up frogging, not because of the sweater, but I wasn't enjoying it. So I was knitting, or I had planned to knit a fingering weight sweater, and I knit my first swatch, just a back and forth 4x4 swatch of stockinette, which is what it said to do. I followed the directions. I didn't get gauge. I was way off, and I couldn't figure out why I was so far off gauge. So I went up a couple sizes, I think, and again, I was like way off. And I am typically either on gauge or very close. The fact that I actually had to go up a size kind of surprised me, but it's a weight yarn I've never used, so I'm not totally surprised. But on that fingering sweater, I had somebody look at it, and I was like, how am I missing gauge so far? And we looked at it, she measured it, and she's like, I don't know what the heck you're doing. And then finally she sat there for a minute and she goes, you didn't knit this in the round. Is your sweater going to be in the round? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, you need to knit in the rounds, and then we'll remeasure it. So I redid my swatch using the recommended size needles, and I got it like the first time. So I knit like, I don't even know how many swatches I knit. Total 4 maybe. I could have saved myself a lot of time and knit one swatch because I hit it that first time knitting in the round. And so always swatch in the round. I cannot stress that enough. If you're, unless it says, some patterns might say don't, but I can't imagine it would be the case for a sweater in the round. Sometimes it'll say knit in pattern, but whatever. Follow your gauge guide on each pattern. So I am actually not using a contrasting yarn. At least that's not the plan as of yet. I don't think that'll change because I don't have any more lace weight yarn in my stash in a different color. This sweater is actually a stash buster, so I had quite a bit of lace weight large heather that I picked up at a, I think I picked it up on a Cyber Monday sale for Knit Picks. So it's a stash buster, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to finish this sock first, and then start working on this in earnest, and see where I get. I'm saying that now, but on my laptop I have the Quince & Co. website open because Joji Locatelli just released her latest sweater pattern, and I fell in love. It's I don't remember the name of it, but it was gorgeous. I was gonna pull up the name of it, but it's knit out of linen, and it actually I am gonna pull it up. Hold on, because it is a beautiful, beautiful sweater, and it she used Quince & Co.'s Sparrow, which is a fingering weight linen yarn from Quince & Co. I just said that a gazillion times. And let's see. I'm sorry, I'm pulling that pattern up because it was so beautiful. And I will show it to you. Let's see. Joji Knits. We'll go to Joji Knits website. And I believe the name of the sweater, Linho. Linho? Yeah, Linho. And I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, it's a gorgeous little sweater. I'm trying to reduce the glare here. It's got a beautiful kind of cable lace pattern down the front, and I love how it's just kind of a nice drapey sweater. I've never worked with linen, and so I'm kind of looking forward to that experience. I don't know. I've heard it can be a little bit tough to work with, in that, not tough, but there's not a lot of stretch to it while you're working with it, and it might hurt your hands a little bit, which for me is an issue. We shall see. But the cost of the Sparrow is pretty inexpensive. I want to say if I use Sparrow, I will be knitting the extra small size, and it uses like 5 skeins maybe, and so it'd be like $50, which is pretty inexpensive for a sweater quantity's worth of yarn. So if for some reason I'm not enjoying the experience, I'm pretty sure I can find someone to buy that yarn, or market bags or something. I don't know, but it would not be an expensive sweater to knit. Yeah. So I may pull the trigger on that one. We shall see. I don't know if I want 2 sweater whips going at once, but it might be 2 sweater whips and a sock whip. I don't know. I have another pair of socks that are actually on the needles waiting to start. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where I go with that. So that's it for my work in progress and my hose and my 3/4 hose. And I did happen to purchase some things. But first, I'm going to pull this one out because it was such an amazing thing to come home to. There's a Ziploc bag involved here. So I have mentioned on the podcast several times Mitchell's Creations. Tara is the dyer, and she also makes beautiful project bags. So go check her shop out. I really enjoy her stuff. I had ordered a skein of yarn, and I came home a couple weeks ago, and had a really tough few days, and I had come home from PT and found a package in the mail, and it was from Tara, and I thought, oh, the yarn I ordered is here, but it wasn't what I ordered. And at first I was like, well, maybe there's an error. But there was a beautiful card in there, and she said, you know, I have a skein of yarn for you, and one for you to give away on your podcast. And I was so touched. I mean, just having her send a skein of yarn to give away would have been just beyond kind, and I was really thankful and touched, but she sent one for me as well. So this is what I arrived home to in my mailbox. Here, I'll show them individually. So this one is, I believe it's called Catastrophe. Yeah, Catastrophe. And it's 75-25, 463 yards, 100 grams. And she included this really cute zipper, or progress keeper. Oops, sorry, wrong way. That's the sheep bottom, which is very cute. I love that little tail. And then here, oh, I'm going the wrong direction, is the sheep face. So there's Mitchell's Creations card. You can see her mitchellssc.etsy.com. Go check her shop out. It's beautiful. And follow her on Instagram. She has some really beautiful pictures that she posts as well. So this is the Catastrophe. This is probably the one that I will give away at some point in the future. I have to come up with a giveaway for that. And then this was the other one that she sent, but I actually fell in love with. And it's not coming up very true. It's more green in person, but it's like greens and blues, and there might be a little bit of black in there, unless it's really saturated blue. I think it's just little blips of black in there. Well, I don't know. No, it's definitely black. So yeah, see, there's the black. And this Progress Keeper is kind of like a steampunk sheep, which is really cute as well. And this is a one-of-a-kind color called Beautiful Creations, and this is the one I fell in love with. So thank you so much, Tara. She also has a coupon code. I believe it's Spring10, not to be used on the Naughty Knitwits Swapless Swap Yarns. So go check her shop out. This is the one that I actually ordered, and it's like a denim color with different saturations of blue, but then there's speckles of black in here. And this one is called April Showers. And again, it's the 75-25 superwash merino nylon, and it's really soft. But this is beautiful. So thank you so much, Tara. I can't even tell you what that meant. Sometimes people just have a way of knowing, or not even knowing, that they're touching somebody else. And that was really nice. Like I said, a bad few days, and to find that was really sweet. And it's very sweet of you to think of the podcast and everybody watching it. So thank you. That will make an appearance again when I come up with a giveaway. And yeah, so check out our shop. She, like I said, beautiful things. So those were my acquisitions. I had to actually, well, I didn't have to. I opened this and I got really excited, and I said, look, Will, which is my husband, I said, somebody sent me yarn. He goes, did somebody send you yarn that you paid for? And I said, no, this was the most beautiful thing. And he goes, I love that yarn. No, kidding. But he was teasing me. He's like, oh, now you're going and saying that people are sending you things. Because I had jokingly had a couple of dyers write some funny messages on the outside of packages when I was ordering things. Tara was one of them, and not to be too graphic, but I just said, could you write on the outside of the package, may contain feminine products? My husband won't go near it then. She did on one of them, which was really funny, and he thought it was hilarious. So he's like, well, how are you screwing with me now? But it wasn't. So he thought it was funny. side story. So yeah. But thank you, Tara. Those, like I said, will be making an appearance on a future podcast for a giveaway. Let's see. I purchased. I mentioned before that I had purchased some Knit Pro Zings, the DPNs. I really wanted to get my hands on them because I'd kind of seen them floating around on Instagram. It's a European brand, so if you follow anybody on Instagram from Europe, you probably will see them. Or any podcasters from Europe, you might see them using the Knit Pro Zings or the Knit Pro brand. So I got my hands on the DPNs, and I liked them. I really liked them. They were a really inexpensive DPN. They, in a lot of ways, reminded me of my signatures. They don't have that. Signature DPNs make this like little zip sound when you pull them through your yarn, or if you move them. The Zings don't do that because they don't have the little ribbing around them, but they're very smooth. They look a lot like signatures, and I really enjoyed them. So I decided to purchase a circular needle. But because they're not sold in the States, you're paying a little bit for shipping. That's how I'm justifying this. Or not. And the other thing too is you may or may not have noticed, I really like needles, and I really like notions, and I really like tools. I like yarn, but I really enjoy needles and tools. So I bought a set of Zing interchangeable needles. And they come in this this little zipper pouch. I took the smallest size out to try. They are in European sizes, so they were like the 3.5. Is that what they come in? Yeah, 3.5. Just to try them, and they're okay. They right out of the package, there were some issues with 2 of the cables. They did not thread onto the tips. Sorry, my allergies. They didn't thread onto the tips very easily, so I contacted the shop where I purchased them, which was Woolstack in the UK, and they were extremely responsive and sent me 2 replacement cables. I always test out my cables on needles when I get them because I have purchased a set in the past, which I promptly sent back, not these, but I had a set of interchangeables that I purchased, and the first thing I noticed when I opened them was I had a tip that had a dent in it, and then I had another tip that had a slight like crease on it. And then I had a cable out of that same set that was just kind of jacked up. So I ended up sending the set back, but as a result, I always do a little quality control on my needles when I first get them because, yeah, I mean, I'm actually glad I did because I had 2 bad cables. But Woolstack was phenomenal. I sent them an email and said, your shipping was fantastic. It was really fast. I appreciate how quickly you send things. I had these 2 cables that unfortunately did not work. They sent me 2 I got an email that night or the next morning because there's a 8-hour time difference, 7-hour, 8-hour, and saying we've reshipped these out and we tested them. So not only did they send them, they tested them, which was great. So these come, you get 8 sets of tips. 8 sets of tips. And they come in this little zipper pouch. Oops, these are the cables that they sent me to replace the two other cables, and it comes with color coordinated cables. So there's a green one that is missing. It's connected to the set of tips that's missing. It's sitting in a bag. They were they're smooth or slick. They're a very slick needle, so that's not at all a complaint. The cables are not the most pliable, which isn't, I mean, some people love stiff cables, and I'm not opposed. I use Chalgoos, which are not a super pliable cable either. But I'm wondering if these needles are compatible with the both the Knit Picks and the Knitter's Pride brands. I know those two are interchangeable. I have some older cables from both of those brands that I'm going to try out, because the older Knit Picks cables and the older Knitter's Pride cables, I don't know about the new ones, were very pliable, and I liked those cables. So I'm going to see if they fit on these and give it a go. The joints are okay. I don't know. We'll try them out, and I'll see how they are. I don't know. The jury's still out. What I did knit with them, which was just a little swatch, maybe 25 stitches over. I think I cast on 25, and I knit for like 2 inches or something. They were okay. It did not involve going over that joint very much, which was kind of a mistake on my part. So I'm going to have to go back and play. But yeah, but they're okay. The other thing I got, if you're going to pay for shipping across the pond, buy some opal. Which kind of surprised me. I bought this because it's kind of sparkly and fun. And I think it's a self-striping. And then I just bought 2 contrasting colors. I did not at all plan on buying like 3 that matched. My brain must have been on matchy mode. So that's what I got. And I'm enjoying them. Yeah, so all the needles and those 3 balls of yarn were from Woolstack. And I will put that in the show notes. The last acquisition I have is from Gail's Art. And I have wanted to try a sock blank for quite some time. And this one is called Slices, I believe. Slice. And it is a single pull. I know you can get sock blanks that they're double, and this is a single. So you have one piece that you pull and you knit from. So I won't be doing concurrent socks with this one, which is fine. I didn't think of that when I bought it. If I had thought, probably should have bought the double pull, but I really wanted to try her blanks, and this one, I love the colors. It's got some purples in different tones, some green, different shades of green, grays, like a steel gray and a steel gray blue. Yeah, so I'm loving this. And these will definitely be socks. I'm excited to see how these colors work up together. And that's part of the fun of a sock blank, is you don't know what it's going to look like till you start knitting it. So I'm excited. And so that was, like I mentioned, Gail's sock. And this is 75/25 superwash merino nylon. 463 yards, 100 grams. So I am excited. Yeah. So we'll try this out. And it's so soft. I love the colors too. So that was my last acquisition. Let's see. Oh, let's go to, there was a question that came up in the Ravelry group. And it was from Grammy Knitterbug, who is I believe her name is Karen, and if it's who I'm thinking, I'm friends with her on Facebook. So hi, Karen. Um, and she had asked whether I knit continental or English style, and I actually have kind of it's a little bit of a hybrid. It's basically English. Um, oh, actually, let me go back because I pulled up the question, and this is word for word. Are you a picker, thrower, or flicker? I knit continental, and I'm trying to teach myself to flick. So technically, I learned how to throw. That's how I learned how to knit. I now have a bit of a hybrid in that I wrap the yarn around my pointer finger and I do kind of flick. I don't let go of my needle completely, which I believe would be like a true throw. Flicking involves not letting go of your needle at all. So I hold on with my thumb and I just kind of flick with my finger. So it's a bit of a hybrid between throwing and flicking. I'm not the fastest knitter. I'm not the slowest either. But for me, that hybrid flick is kind of what my muscles settled into and my hand movements settled into. I have tried continental and I'm not very good at it. I think for me, it was a little bit of a frustration because it was such a learning curve after knitting for so long that it just didn't feel natural or good. But after learning to crochet, I'm wondering if it would be easier to go back and learn how to knit continental. So now I'm curious. I may go back and try that just as a challenge. So thank you for your question. I hope I answered it sufficiently. If anybody has a question, please feel free to post in there. I'm happy to answer almost anything. It can be anything knitting related or technique related, or you can ask me anything about where I live, the area. Not everybody has visited this area. Ask me anything. If it's too personal, I may draw the line. There's very few areas that are off limits, but yeah. But I don't know till someone asks. So feel free to ask, and I would be happy to answer it on the podcast. Or if it's something that needs like a longer explanation or links, it may be, I answer part of it on the podcast, or I may, answer it in the thread and post links. I don't know. So go ahead, roll the dice. Let's see what we got. So yeah, feel free to post that. So I always like to give a little bit of a tip in my podcast. And so today, I'm going to show you something that actually my youngest son pulled out the other day, and he said, Mom, you should show your first knitting on your podcast. And I thought, that's a brilliant idea, Hunter. So I dug 3 pieces out that I kept. This is the very first thing I ever knit. It is not beautiful. My first needles ever were size 10 bamboo Takumi straight needles. And this is, I don't know the brand of the yarn, but it is very chunky. And I believe it's alpaca and acrylic probably. I have never taken lessons. I learned how to knit I started with a video. I believe it was called Teen Knit Cafe. That's the first thing I watched. And then I progressed to YouTube. So, it's not beautiful. It's got, a hole here. It's got some wonky tension. It doesn't look, it's nothing. I mean, it's not an actual item other than, this rectangle. And it was really just me learning how to knit. It was muscle memory, which is, all part of knitting. I kept it because for sentimental reason. It was the first thing I ever knit. And I like to kind of benchmark things and be able to go back and see, what I've done. So I kept it. Every once in a while I pull it out. It's kind of buried in one of my stash drawers. The other thing I knit was, this is even more hideous. You would think this was number one, but this is not. This is just, I don't even know. It was, I believe, an attempt at a dishcloth using what I affectionately call clown barf, which I want to say is probably peaches and cream, or one of those commercially available cottons, like kitchen cotton. It does appear that I was attempting to learn the seed stitch, so there's that. But as you can see, I've got runs of stockinette thrown in with my seed stitch. Again, I kept this. This is great for me to go back and look at. The thing about keeping those early pieces is that I don't think people give themselves enough credit. Learning to knit, knitting doesn't feel normal when you first start. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. It feels weird. I've talked about this a lot, but you're building muscle memory. You're learning an awful lot. It's a new language. It's a new movement. It's building those neural pathways in your brain for muscle memory. So there's a lot going on. And when you start something that, I'm just going to learn to knit, I don't think people realize, you is kind of generalized, I don't think people always realize just how much is involved in that, physically or physiologically. Knitting is great at building neural pathways. It's great because it's patterning, and from an occupational therapy perspective, patterning is really good for rewiring the brain. It's something that's used quite a bit in, it could be stroke patients because they've damaged an area of their brain. It could be people who have some sort of brain injury, which obviously would include stroke patients. It could be people that, people with autism. They have areas of their brain that work differently. And so sometimes you are rewiring to build sequencing and patterning in other areas of the brain. That happens to be my background. I have 2 children with autism, and so we have a lot of occupational therapy experience in this house, 8 years of it. So, then physiologically building the muscle memory so that your fingers just know what they're doing. Like, at this point, I can knit and not watch. That's not something that you start out with because, those muscles are being required to move in ways they have not ever been required to move repetitively, unless you're a musician, but even then it's different muscle memory. So I don't think everybody always realizes how much knitting kind of requires, and so it doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel natural, and it certainly doesn't look great right out of the gate. The other thing, so then this was my first big project. I knit a scarf. it's hideous. So hideous. There's a lot of errors in it. And, the funniest thing about this is that what I cast on and what I finished with, totally different. So, it doesn't match up. Even if this were blocked, it wouldn't match up. The beautiful thing about this piece is that, one, it's really soft. My youngest claimed it immediately off and actually while it was still on the needles, he really wanted it. He was, I don't know, he was probably 6 or 7 at the time. So fairly young. He slept with this for a couple of years. Because it is so soft. It's an organic cotton, probably a Lion brand or something I picked up at Joann's. It's not beautiful. But the one thing that I get out of these 3 things is that I can go back and really take time to appreciate how far I've come. If you're a new knitter, pull things out, at intervals. Like, maybe knit something and put it away for, 3 months, 6 months, a year. But keep pulling it out because it really gives you a sense of accomplishment. It really shows you how far you've come, how much your body and your brain have taught themselves and rewired. So it's nice to look back. You also, one of the things you'll notice is that your tension really relaxes once that muscle memory has been built. So it's nice. At this point, I've been knitting 6-ish years, and I've knit shawls, I've knit socks, I've knit hats, I've knit sweaters, I've knit dishcloths, I've knit, I don't know, cowls, I've knit all kinds of things, toys. I would have never thought that I could knit those things when I first made this. So when I go back and look at it, especially after I've had kind of a rough go on a project, and I think, wow, who would have ever thought 6 years ago that I would knit these other things and they would be beautiful or, well, passable or whatever. Who would have ever thought that I had graduated to, nicer yarn or nicer needles or had a tulle infatuation. But, I really encourage you to do that. Or not. If you don't like hanging on to stuff. But I was really, maybe a year out from knitting, and I pulled these out, and I was like, whoa, can't believe this was me a year ago, or 2 years ago, or whatever. Now I've seen them so many times, I'm like, oh, yeah, I sucked. But I really encourage you as new knitters to keep those early things, and don't toss everything. It's nice to go back and look, and I think it's encouragement to keep going. So yeah. So we went through my finished objects, my half-finished objects, my work in progress, my acquisitions, my tip, my question, and that's like the meat of the podcast. I'm going to give an update. So for those of you who have tuned in for Knitting Alone, thank you for joining me. And you can find me on Instagram as Dirty Knitting Hippy. You can find me on Ravelry as Tyler's Mom Chris. And there's the Ravelry group, Dirty Knitting Hippy Podcast. And I will link everything in the show notes, both on YouTube, in the, what do they call it? The doodly-doo? Dangly-doo? I don't know. I'm not very tech savvy. And I will post a link to the show notes in the Ravelry group. So thank you for joining me. Those of you who were wondering how I am, I will give my update. So I've had, let's say I am 9 weeks post-op. Yeah, 9 weeks post-op. And recovery is going so slow. So very slow. We are putting my mother-in-law on a plane this Friday to go home to Mississippi. And I'm incredibly thankful and blessed that she came out um, for my surgery. She wanted to get here the day before, which was very sweet. And she has taken on a lot with this family and helping me out. So I'm thankful. And she's going home. I think it's time for everybody. It's a long time to share space with someone, and she has a life that I'm sure she misses greatly. So yeah, we'll be sad to see her go, but we've enjoyed our time with her. Recovery wise, I was cleared to drive, which was kind of the catalyst for her to go home. That was the big thing, was that I wouldn't be able to drive. So I am driving now. I started driving a little bit I started driving in traffic. And Bay Area traffic is no joke. So I'm capable of doing that. I am starting to walk. Big milestone. I'm not recovering as fast as they would like. My body has gone into revolt, and I developed a complication after surgery, complex regional pain syndrome, which started off as just an irritated foot. So it's not been a picnic, but I'm weight bearing. I'm learning to walk. I have weaned down to one crutch most of the time. If I'm in public, sometimes I take two if I'm going to be doing some walking around. At home, I just this week have started to walk a little bit without crutches at all. A lot tougher than I remember. But it's going, and I am tolerating it in small bits because of the regional pain syndrome, which flares a little bit when I'm more exhausted. I still am on bed rest when I'm home, which is a little bit of a frustration point for me because I'm trying to find that balance. But it's going well, and I'm feeling pretty good. A little bit discouraged at the pace at which I'm recovering. I knew it would be slow. I didn't think that meant me. I thought that meant everybody else around me that my PT was talking about, even though there was nobody sitting around me. But I couldn't ask for a better PT. He's really phenomenal, so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that he's in the same clinic as my surgeon. They've powwowed a couple times about how I'm doing or how I'm not doing. I'm getting fitted for what is called a jazz splint, which is a big metal frame that I will have to manually crank for about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. I'll find out more details when I meet the rep and my PT as to what my protocol actually will be, which means more bed rest to accommodate that, which sucks. But in getting out, we've had date night, which has been a lot of fun. So my husband and I actually went out on Friday and saw aliens. Aliens? I don't do well with things that jump out at me. I tend to jump too. So I was the one that suggested maybe we would go see the movie because I know, he didn't want to see Beauty and the Beast or Guardians of the Galaxy or anything like that. So I pulled up my big girl panties and bought the tickets, and we saw it, and I didn't jump. I actually didn't like the movie. Sorry if you did, but it's not what I thought it was going to be. I really liked the original. So that was fun, though, just getting out and the two of us. And let's see, I took the boys. My mother-in-law is actually visiting her other two sons. up in Placerville, which is kind of in the mountains on the Sierra Mountains, or the Sierra Nevada Mountains, on the way to Tahoe. She's been there for a few days before she goes home. She'll come back tonight, actually. And so I took the boys to see Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a nice, quiet activity. We can go in, and they have recliners. Which is why I've been seeing movies, because that's like one of the only activities that I can actually participate in right now outside of the house. Yesterday, I had my first trip to the grocery store with the kids. So that was exciting, a little overwhelming, probably a little too ambitious. But overall, things are going well. And the boys are officially out for summer. We homeschool, but we use a charter school to do so. And classes are mostly over. We have 2 more weeks of one of my son's science classes. My older son uses the community college for a lot of his high school classes. Nice thing about that is, number one, we don't have to pay for it because he's officially a high schooler. Number two, it counts for college transfer classes. So we're not having to pay for some classes that he will be taking when he goes to a four-year university after he graduates. He'll be a senior this year. So he's taking a biology class, human biology this summer. So we're going to be busy. It's an entire semester condensed into 6 weeks. So he's going to be on campus a lot. That means a lot of knitting. And then both of the boys over the summer will continue occupational therapy and speech therapy. I've mentioned before they have autism. So minimal services over the summer. And then my older son meets with his math tutor 3 times a week. So that would be our official year being over, but in all reality, it sounds like a full schedule, and it is. So we are never bored here, which is nice. So that is my personal update. If you've stuck around for that, thanks. Hopefully you're not too bored. I will see you next time, and happy knitting. Go make some beautiful things, and I will see you in a little bit. Take care. Bye, guys.